Okay, we're live at 11:05 on BC. This is Spirit Cars, and actually this isn't 11:05. Our camera person, she had a flat tire today and had one the other day, and she's getting new tires. So we have Josh, the voice of Spirit Cars, behind the camera, and he's, as usual, talking to somebody. Did you make a big sale? I heard you talking.
Maybe. Turnkey.
You sold this, seriously?
Maybe.
Okay, well, I'm excited for that, can't you tell? But we have Bob Knight. We talked about that yesterday. It's coming on board. We're going to do our turnkeys in a new building. So we're working on Dorothy. This morning I'm cutting glass. So I was cutting glass, and I was like, oh, I better just do a video on cutting glass because I'm cutting glass for the car, and that's what I'm going to do now. Just some hints and tips on glass. We use safety glass. What safety glass is, it's not tempered. Sometimes tempered glass, if you just touch the edge, it explodes like a back glass or side glass sometimes. But you can take a hammer and sometimes smash it directly in the middle, and you're like, what in the world? It doesn't break. Or you can but you can break it that way. It breaks much easier on it. So it's all tempered. You can't cut that. It is what it is. Then you've got the pane glass, like what would be in your house. When you break the glass, it's got these giant shards of glass and cuts you big time, and it's not a good thing. So the safety glass, what it is, there's two layers of glass with plastic in between it. Can you actually see that? Oh, here you can see it kind of good on this, I think. But there's two layers of glass in there with plastic in between. So what I've got to do to cut this, well, first off, I've already cut the windshield. And so just in cutting, it's kind of easy if you go just a straight line. Now you've got to cut it on one side, and then you've got to turn it over and cut it on the other side. And the closer you make the line on the bottom to the line on the top, the better you're going to be. Because when you break it back both sides, you got to break the top, then you got to break the bottom, and it's still going to be held together with this plastic that's in between it. Let's see. Speaking of which, we have. That's a tool I decided to use because I'm a self-taught guy here. I don't know, how did it happen that I had to do the glass?
We bought that company and it was like we had no one to cut glass.
Oh yeah, the people we had cutting our glass went out of business. So we bought all their glass and nobody knew how to cut glass. So I'm cutting glass, and I'm telling you what, if you ever do something you don't know what you're doing and you're learning and you're doing the curve, man, it could be 20 degrees out and the sweat is pouring off of me, and I'm doing it. I actually ruined more glass than I would like to admit to. But I've learned enough where I could probably fake my way into a glass company now and cut glass. So you can do it, and I learned on YouTube, and it looks like you might be learning on YouTube too. So it's not that difficult. Back to the curve. If I've got an inside curve here, boy, you got to make sure that you're running that cut. So I'm going to make the cut with the glass cutter. I'll make the cut on it, and I'll show you how to do that in a second. I'll turn it over. I'll make the cut in the exact same spot. I cut it here, then I crack it a little bit, and I run that line all the way down. Then I crack the other side of it. I run that line all the way down, and then I start trying to bend it a little bit. But now I can't bend it straight down because it's going to hang here and hang here. So I take my heat and I bend down. A lot of the ways that the glass guys will do it, they take, I don't know if they take lighter fluid or acetone or something. Once they get it cracked, they just put that on there and light it with a lighter, and so you got the fire going on, and the fire melts that glass in between them. I did it that way for a long time, and then this is not where I cut glass. I've actually got a room that's got a 4x8 table. It's got carpet on it, and now my carpet is all burned everywhere. The carpet on the floor is burned. Everything's on fire whenever I put and then it doesn't necessarily always heat it up enough to get it down. If you bend it down far enough, you can take a razor blade and cut it and get it off. So if you watch YouTube videos, that's going to be the way you see it on all of them. I'm going to do it a little different. Since I'm not a glass guy, I didn't learn from a glass guy. I didn't have to think in the glass guy box. So I thought outside the glass guy box. This technique works for me. We'll get to that part when we get to that part. So you got to be careful because that line might not run exactly on where you cut. The line might run up into your glass and then you ruin the glass. Going on an outside curve, a little bit easier. But again, you've got a curve coming in this way. So when you break it and you're trying to, work it down and get that plastic burn out of there or melt it out of there, it's putting it in a bind. And if you put it in too much of a bind, and you can see this is pretty close. I mean, this is cut. I did a pretty good job hitting my top line and my bottom line together. And this can be sanded. I sanded the edge right here, and I just did it with a belt. We've got a big belt sander. It's actually made for doing that, and water goes on it. But you could use a sander and keep it wet. I think I use 80 grit or 60 grit or something like that to sand it. And it sands pretty quick. Wears out your paper pretty quick, but I would say a belt sander, and if you keep it wet, you can actually, while you're sanding it, get this glass red hot. I mean, to the point of melting, which is not good. So if you just keep pouring a little bit of water on it to keep it cool, that'll work. So doing the curved one is not as easy as a straight one. I'd much rather do Model A's because everything is rectangle and square. Even the side glass is all rectangle and square. 32, pretty swoopy. Door glass is pretty swoopy. Windshield, pretty swoopy. Now the back glass, it's going to bond in from the inside, and I think tomorrow, I'll save gluing in the back glass till tomorrow. I need to get that in so I can start putting the interior together. But I think I'll show y'all how to put the glass in tomorrow, and we'll probably have the front glass already in there and kind of talk about that and something else tomorrow, but don't worry about that today. Why would you want to cut glass? I don't know, why would you want to cut glass? It's not my favorite job here. I don't want to cut it. But it's not that bad, really. And here's why you would want to cut it. I was going to bring the pattern. I use, for my pattern here, you could use a piece of 1/4 inch plywood, or we use the board, the upholstery board. And I've got a pattern that fits this exactly. I've got a pattern that fits this. I've got a pattern. So I take my pattern, put it on there, I just mark it with a marker and cut it that way. So if you've got a car, a random car, you've got a windshield, you know what your windshield opening is, you can take and cut you a board to fit your windshield or your door glass. If you've got a door glass that's got a crack in it, you can take that door glass out, put it on a board or on another piece of glass and use that glass that's cracked as your pattern. I don't know, not all, we're in a small town, but it's inconvenient for us to cut glass. And now that we're out and flipping, it's like, not just inconvenient, it's like the other side of the world we got to go to get to the glass company. And some of the big city glass companies aren't really specialized in cutting safety glass. The market for that is not huge, so if there's not a big market for it, you just don't do it. But you can get the glass. You can get tinted glass, you can get green and gray and bronze, and this is clear, and so you can get tinted glass. We don't put tinted in the windshield, but we'll put tinted on the sides and in the back a lot of times. So why would you do it? Because you can, for one. It may be a little cheaper, and it may be that your only option. You might not be able to find somebody to cut your glass. It'd be a lot easier to get a piece of glass from a glass company than it would be to have it cut. You know, they may be like, oh, well, we'll do it, but it'd be 3 weeks or whatever. And really, it's only, you know, I would say this took me an hour to cut, maybe less. And this was the only piece, I didn't break one doing it, so that's a good thing. So I've got this, it's not big enough to fit in there, but it's the one I grabbed. A square is a good thing, a big flat table is a good thing. You can wear gloves. The edges are fairly sharp if you run your finger around it this way, but it's not near as bad as sometimes when you break that plate glass in your window and you got them giant shards, it'll cut you bad. So you can get cut here. Don't play around with it, it's glass, but. So anyway, safety first. I have my mask on because Josh does have the cooties, you know. They're the girls. I'm messing with all my granddaughters. They got cooties. And I have my gloves on, so safety first. I probably should wear an apron too in case it jumps off and cuts my shirt or anything. But anyway, I'm good here. So I cut me a line. I got me a line. Not an impressive marker, I don't see it very well, but it did make a line. I get my glass cutters at Lowe's. It's a Cobalt glass cutter only because we have a Lowe's here and they have glass cutters. It is a crappy glass cutter. I would highly not recommend a Lowe's glass cutter. It's Cobalt, and the only reason I buy it is because they're what, $2.50 a piece. You can change the blade 6 times, so you loosen it up and you roll the blade over, and I go there and I buy a bunch of them. And the blade don't last very long, and sometimes the blade will even go in, I mean, before you even cut a little bit. Here's the key. It's when I figured this out, that's when I actually start cutting glass pretty good. But you can't go over it twice, you gotta go over it only one time. You're looking at, I think, maybe 5 to 7 pounds of pressure. I don't know, but I'm putting pressure on it, but I'm not putting a huge amount of pressure on it. I'm being consistent in my pull, and I'm listening. It's almost like welding. I can, if I'm walking through the shop and they're welding, I know if they're welding right or not. If I hear somebody with splattering and carrying on, which we don't hear, but if I got a new guy and I hear that, I don't need to be watching them to know the weld is pretty bad. So it's, you got that, you want that sizzle when you're welding. It's almost like the same way here. It's almost like a sizzle. You can hear it pull through. When you start it, you're going to start on the outside edge a little bit. Careful you don't nick the corner, because it could kind of go one way or another. And when you drop off the end, again, it's going to slam off the blade and into that. So you want to be a little careful. So I'm kind of a two-handed guy. I kind of feel where the edge is, get it started. You could probably hear that on the...
Oh yeah.
Could you hear that? I'm working with a piece of glass that's already got a split in it. A piece like this is going to be pretty easy. So I'll just take it on the end and give it a quick snap down, and that should break it. If I'm doing a big piece like this, I'm not going to want it to be real long. What I'll probably do is take my square and cut it to be about this distance. That way when I come along, if it's going to give anywhere and want to split outside of that, it'll split on this side of it rather than going this way, which it doesn't matter. But if it starts running, just be careful. And especially on something like this, you want to be a little careful. And I'll take my pliers and I'll pull it down, and I can watch the line run as it's going down. And then the same, so I want to run the line down. I don't want to just kind of bash the whole thing across. So on here, I should be able to, it broke, okay? I got a little carried away. I made a bit of a clamshell here. You got to be careful of that. But I was not careful. And you can see how much give it is on here. This material is fairly warm. It works much better when it's warm out than it does when it's cold. And actually, I've heard people say this, and I believe it because just from some experience, older glass is harder to cut than fresh glass. Kind of doesn't make sense, but I guess it does. So I don't know when this glass was made, but we bought it not that long ago. We go through quite a bit of glass, but the temperature makes a big difference. If it's really cold out here, I can break this and it won't make hardly any give. Right now, I can let go of this thing and it's going to start drooping. That's all it's going to go. But so if I'm working on a long piece, I mean, if you want to freehand something, I don't know why you would, but I can see that line from the other side now. It's actually pretty straight, but don't matter. I could make it a curved line or whatever. I should have made it a curved line. You hear that popping? What I do before every cut, I've got a little bit of oil in here. I run some oil on my blade, because there's a little bit of glass sometimes get in there. And again, poor quality built tool, but it works. You've got 6 different shots at it. They're $2 and something cents a piece, so when you buy cheap, that's what you get sometimes, it's cheap. So I've cut this one on both sides. There's this tool, and I put tape on all of them just because it, cushions it. So you can see it's got kind of a V bevel there, and then on the bottom, so when I push it, I'm gonna break it right there. So I can kind of do the same thing by hitting it like that, and that, I just felt that crack. And can you see in there how I'm starting, is it possible to see? It's starting to run. Can you see that? Well, it broke too fast, but if on a big piece, it will run on one side usually, and then you've got to break the other side and run it up. Now, here's where I'm different from most glass guys. At this point, you can take a razor blade, a razor knife, and heat this up to get it down. You don't want to see what I'm doing here. See all these clamshells? Just by not being careful, and I'm letting it, I'm knocking the edges where this doesn't have any. If I'm careful, I can do that without making these. A lot of times you'll see on a door glass it'll have these things. It won't run, but it's not good. This is I've had this thing for ages. When plastic bumpers first come out, they had a rod, you could actually weld the bumpers. So this makes a lot of heat on the end of here. So if I get that heat in here, and I put it on it, I don't know if you can see in there, but I'm actually burning through. Can you see it moving that? The plastic burning through in there? Yeah. So I'm burning that plastic through in there. And on a big piece, I would gradually go all the way down and heat it up a little bit. And you can still push it down enough. And if you've got a clean, and this is pretty good. I've got, maybe I'm off a little bit over here. But you want to get these two as close as you can get them. Because if it's off a little bit, that'll really help it to make that clamshell thing too. So anyway, it's pretty warm. If I push this, I've got 4, 5, 6 pounds of pressure on it. You can kind of see that plastic in there. This is a good way to ruin the edge of your glass, so I would not recommend this. And you can see as I'm heating it up, this is blowing that apart. And I could do the same thing with a razor blade too, probably. But tools are pretty cheap. You probably don't even need one of these, but I bet you could get one of these online for, I don't know, $10 or something. Get one of these online for $6 or $8 or $10. Go to Lowe's, get one for $2.50, and you got 6 shots at it. If you're not getting the sizzle and the blade is sticking and you're dragging it, get yourself a Phillips screwdriver, twist it, and you got 6 chances. It's got 6 blades on there. Just keep twisting around as the one wears out. Don't think you're saving money by trying to cut with a dull blade. You'll crack your glass and it won't be a good thing. So cutting glass is not for everybody, but it's could be. If you need to, you can cut your own glass. The days of chopping tops are, that doesn't happen very often anymore, but the same principle would be for cutting a windshield. Both sides, cut, break it carefully, but that's how you could cut your windshield, whether you're going to lay it back or whatever you're going to do. There's a lot of different ways for that. So that would be one option where you may or may not be able to take a windshield from an old 50 Merc. There's not very many around anymore. We actually just sold one. Went to Australia. But, if you cut the glass and the old lead sled guys, not many around anymore. We're dying breed. So since we're dying breed, that brings me to today's warning. Make sure you're not on the this platform if you're easily offended, I guess, or if scriptures or something like that hurt your feelings or anything like that. So I'm I'm gonna do the chair thing. I got a chair. I'm kind of letting you guys into a snippet of my life. This is me, this is today, this is live at 11:05. Missed it by a little bit, but that's because somebody had a flat tire, Josh is off the phone. Here it is, here's what's going on. So I've been trying to figure out what this prayer thing is about. I've been trying to stop at the Overlook now, going into Cotter. And actually, as I got there this morning, first off, I'm going to stop there. I'm thinking about it. I'm going to stop there. Okay, I'm getting up to it. I'm going to stop there. I totally forgot that I'm going to stop there. Like 2 miles from the place, I'm like, all right, I'm going to stop up here and go there. I'm thinking about that as I'm thinking about what I'm going to do here and here and here and here. As I get 1,000 feet away from the place, I'm like going to zoom past it. And then as I'm getting like right there, I'm going, oh, I need to go in here. So it has not become a habit. But as I'm sitting there this morning, I'm thinking, wait a minute. When we first moved out to Flippin, that was a habit. Because the little town of Cotter down there got bypassed by 412. So that's, you're on 412 looking down at a town that got bypassed, and it's like a poverty town. It's like there's nothing happening there. So for a while, I was just focused on, with the church, reaching Cotter. And Cotter's the kind of place, why would you want to reach? Everybody's like poor there, and they can't pay for your big expensive building, I guess. And I hate to look at things that way, but a lot of times evangelism is done based on the ability to pay our expenses and our bills and our pastor and our fancy this and that. I'm not being negative, I'm just kind of being realistic. That's not all people, but generally trends. We want to go on a mission trip for 2 weeks, feel good about it and come home. We don't want to pay the price that it might take. Count the cost. If you're going to take up you're going to follow me, count the cost. Take up your cross and follow me. So I'm up there this morning, looking down, thinking about prayer. I'm still trying to figure out what this prayer thing is, because first I got to figure it out before I really get praying. So I'm on to James. I'm not even going there, but I'm in my mind. It's good to kind of know the word. So it says in James, if anyone lacks wisdom, let him ask, and God's going to give it to you. Just ask in faith. So, all right, I got this question. It's like, all right, what do I need? What am I looking for here? So I'm just kind of random, and I go to John. So I'm reading the word. What better place to find the meat? We talked about a little bit of the meat yesterday. Then go into the word. So I'm in John, and I'm in the Lazarus story, which it's kind of appropriate. The world is freaking out over, okay, I'm going to die. Well, yeah, at some point, it's kind of like how it ends, unless the Lord returns. Although and I'm going to tell you, this is just my world. If you made it this far into here, you're in my zone. I'm just sharing my life with you. When I was a young man, not married, not even a young man, I already had my body shop and all this other stuff. I start studying and looking. I believe then as much as I believe now, because why would I change my belief in that? Christ is going to return in my lifetime. Whether he does or doesn't, that's really irrelevant. But I'm going to live my life like he's going to return in my lifetime. BC. He's coming. So I had to come to the point in my mind, because you can't just sit there going, oh, he's going to be here any second. I come to the point in my mind where I'm going to live my life like I'm going to have grandkids. I'm going to move ahead. I'm going to be a part of society. I'm not going to be just stalled here freaking out. And I have 6 great grandkids and great children, and I just count all my spouses and children. They're all my children now. And we're building things. We're growing. We're doing, but it's not that important any more than what is the meat. The meat is doing the will of God. What is the will of God? Well, all right, it's telling other people about Christ. I mean, we can go into the Great Commission, but we're not going there. Right now we're going to Lazarus, and he's like dying. Christ knows about it, but he hangs out for another 2 days. And then finally he's like, let's go to Judea. And so this is John, chapter 11, starting in, let's go 7. I'm going to jump around, and I don't want to take it out of context, but I'm taking it out of context. You better read it to put it back in the right context if you want to do that. Verse 7, then after this he said to his disciples, let us go to Judea again. The disciples said to him, Rabbi, the Jews were but now seeking to stone you, and are you going there again? And Jesus answered, now here's some, I want to understand this. I'm just going to read this. I'm going to work on understanding it too. Are there not 12 hours in the day? If any one of you walks in the day, he does not stumble, because he sees the light of this world. But if he walks in the night, he stumbles, because the light is not in him. That's just a freebie. Figure that out. So he's going to go to Judea. Lazarus is like, basically he knows he's dead now. And he tells the disciple he's sleeping. They're like, oh, he's sleeping. Well, so why are we going there? And then they're going, you go to Judea, they want to kill you. Don't you know that? They're going to stone you. So then, a little bit later in here, Thomas, called the twin, said to his fellow disciples, let us go also, that we may die with him. I mean, okay, we're following him. What's he thinking? He's going to go over here, they want to kill him, and they're getting pretty serious about it. All right, fine, let's go. We'll die with him. And off they went. I don't think we have much of a warrior mentality in this country. Now, a lot of people do. As Christians, we sure don't have a warrior mentality. What is death? We have a duty. We have a duty to do whatever we're told to do. Do it. Death is like I have no martyr complex. Trust me, we got some exciting things going on here. But his disciples were like, fine, you're going, we'll go too, even if we got to die for it. And then if you want to read farther into here, I mean, this is getting to the end. He raised Lazarus. Now Lazarus was dead. He was dead and he was in the tomb. He goes there and he raised him from the dead. It wasn't his time to be dead. The only reason he was dead for a little while, is so that God could get the glory when Christ raised him from the dead. And I'm telling you what, it ticked off the Pharisees. It like to the point of they made a commitment to kill him at that point. And you can go into chapter 12, and it's not long before they crucify him after that. And so that was a pretty exciting morning at the Overlook. We got some glass cut. It's coming together. I'm excited. Kendall's excited. He's ready for the show season. I don't know if he texted me or I've seen a comment, but I'm ready to see it gone too. Not because I'm tired of seeing it, but it's coming to the end. It's like getting to the end to be finished. Putting the glass in, we'll put the big tires back on it, get some things done up here. Going to be running some wires here real soon. I want to get the glass in first though, in the front and the back, so we can tighten up some of that. I think tomorrow we'll show the back glass on this one. Until tomorrow, hopefully our camera person Elizabeth is back tomorrow. Peace be with you, and we will see you tomorrow.